thank you, darling.
I won't be able to see a thing.
I know. We have technical difficulties like we did last week. And, it looks to us like I'm not broadcasting, but yay that you guys can see me. This is cool. So, however many people are there, would each of you just say, yes, I'm here, or yes, or I'll check in or something? At any rate, thank you for tuning in tonight to the Red Room. This is Heather, and I'm excited about our topic tonight, and I was sad not to be able to broadcast last night. I'm glad that you can see me and hear me, and that you could download your handout for this evening, and that the topic is sexual intimacy, the panacea, the universal panacea. And of course, a topic that most everybody is interested in. And I'm delighted to share my thoughts with you tonight, and I'd love for you to ask me any questions, whether it's on this topic or another one. From your handout tonight, I call sexual intimacy the universal panacea. The universal panacea is kind of like the universal calmer, rejuvinator, healer, relaxer, well-being-er, that if we have a pretty healthy sex life, it rejuvenates us in some way or another, no matter what it is that's stressing us or troubling us or hurting us or putting us in a confused or lost state. If we can have caring sex with our beloved, somehow or another, it heals a whole lot, and the world can go away, and we can just come to that quiet, intimate, kind, loving place with each other. I love that. I remember reading a book long ago about a man and a woman, a husband and wife, who were, he was a warrior in a very cold climate, and people were getting killed. It was stressful, and the place that he went to heal and the place where she went to heal were in their warm furs together, making love with each other. I love that image, and it stayed with me all through the years, reminding me that when we come together as a man and a woman, a husband and wife, two lovers, no matter where we are on the planet Earth, no matter how old we are, if we're adults, I hope that's for sure, we tend to each other in the deepest, most healing, rejuvenating way when we can make love with each other, or when we can have kind sex. Sometimes it's not making love, sometimes it's just caring or kind or satisfying or generous, whatever it is in this positive aspect, having the sexual encounter with each other. Now, of course, in so many ways in our times, our sexual encounters, our own sexual relationship with the sense of our own bodies and our sexuality with relationships is troubled in so many ways. And that saddens me and concerns me greatly, because if I think of it as the universal panacea, where any of us can be renewed and revitalized with our lover, and it's troubled, then even that in a stressful time we are deprived of. So I wanted to answer questions that you have and to talk generally about it. And I think of our sexual drive, our sexual nature. It's a connection with great power, energy, power, the power of energy, the power of love, the power of desire, the power of lust. And we have appetite for that. And we may have a healthy appetite, or like in many other ways that we have appetites, it may be an unhealthy appetite. But what I hope for, what I coach for, what I mentor people for, is to have a healthy appetite and to get nourishing quote unquote food for that appetite. I wanted to read you this quote from the top of your handout tonight. It is not enough to conquer. One must know how to seduce, which is Voltaire. And how to seduce is to add the magic of romance and attractiveness and desire in the artful way to our sexual engagement, our sexual encounters. And that would be the top of the list for me, that whatever it is that we pursue as an endeavor in life, that if we choose, we can make it difficult or unhealthy or even hurtful, and we can also make it healthy or happy or joyful or blissful or poetic. And I prefer that we cultivate, of course, the positive ways of that, and that it is an art form for each couple that can, if they so choose, last a lifetime. And that means that the more poetry I write, the better poet I become. The more I make love, the better I am as a lover. And that's a lovely thing to learn, grow, practice, and, on through life. It's a way of being intimate, a way of finding that bond in so many ways. So I'm interested if any of you have questions about that or concerns or worries. And of course, as a marriage counselor and a therapist, I get all kinds of concerns, questions, worries, frustrations, fears. And I'm very happy to mentor people with that. So here's what I wrote for tonight. Sex is really good for you. Making love renews you in every way. Sexual intimacy connects you emotionally with your beloved for vulnerability, happiness, comfort. Mentally, it induces a vacation. You take away all the worries and the concerns that tick through the left brain and moves you into the sensory right brain part of your thought process. Spiritually, it inspires the deepest loving gratitude and adoration. Psychologically, it creates the deepest bond with another human being. And there are a host of physical benefits. And so I quote here from research from Johns Hopkins, where the body's endorphin production increases by 200% after a sexual encounter. Sex can also relieve headaches, improve depression, and create a sense of relaxation. And when I'm mentoring couples where we're wanting to embellish or increase or improve the health of their sex life, I remind them that sometimes one of the things, especially for a woman, but for both of us, obviously, it's so wonderful when we can enter our sexual space with what I call, quote unquote, vacation attitude. Or if when we go into that space, the vacation attitude blossoms, where it's like time off. There's no ticking clock, there's no alarm, there's no intrusion, and it's focused on enjoyment, pleasure, and being at ease with each other, like as if in public you were on a beach with beautiful wind, breeze. That vacation attitude is delight, joy, even bliss. Let's see. Finally, your immune system reaps the benefits of increased resistance to illness. So what more could you ask for from something? This is the best quote-unquote pill that I can imagine. So what's your next step in taking these benefits for yourself? Perhaps you already do, you're already good at it, and it's something that you rely on in the healthiest way. Does it benefit your partner equally then, or your relationship? So there are dozens of questions about how our sexual relationship or encounter can be improved, can be hindered. And one of the things, frankly, I am very much in touch with, because I'm a woman, is being born in these times where, like it or not, the reality is, in so many subtle and sometimes obvious and derogatory ways, men are usually above women. And we hear that in the news, we see that all over our culture, our civilization, and most of our cultures. And so as a woman then, since I was born in ways that I'm aware of and many ways that I'm unaware of, I've struggled with feeling as if I'm of equal value to men, even though my mom and dad consciously tried to live that way. And that therefore my sexual nature, which is very unlike a man's sexual nature, is equally healthy, and even though it's different, equally valuable, equally important. And that I learn the differences, and I know how to be artful with those differences. People from my generation, as most of you know, since I'm 61 years old, we were deprived of information, whether it was just there isn't any written information. We were usually deprived of information because no one would talk about our sexuality, our genitals, our gender differences in our bodies, and help us to be joyful and healthy and happy with that. So over the decades, I've been pretty courageous, if I say so myself, learning, discovering, wanting to know, wanting to be healthy, wanting to be mature, wanting to move in the direction of self-mastery and excellence, about my identity and beingness as a woman, as a sexual person, as a woman sexually, and as a woman sexually in a relationship with my beloved. And so, I probably will end up writing a book about that someday. But I know many things, and I teach many things when I work with couples or individuals about finding your sexuality in a healthy, happy way. And so the handout that I shared with you this evening, there are 5 sexual failures that we want to avoid in a traditional marriage or intimate relationship. And the way I see it, traditional gender roles, the role that we have, however we structured that in our own identity, the gender role of a woman and the gender role of a man can be the source of loss of passion and romance in a marriage. And to keep our passion alive, today's couples need to know how to avoid these 5 types of failures. And I found the resources of this in one of my favorite researchers, Pepper Schwartz. And so I built on these pieces because this comes directly from her finely done research. So I was comfortable in sharing that with you tonight. The failure of timing, the failure of intimacy, the failure of sexual empathy, the failure of reciprocity, back and forth with each other, and the failure of romanticization. And chime in. Let me know if you're there, because this evening some of my software isn't working correctly, and I'm so glad that you've chimed in and told me that I do have some of you there here with me, even though I've had to reboot a couple of times. So the failure of timing in our sexual intimacy, when only one person is in charge of the sexual relationship, that's a failure. Because both need to have the power to suggest having sex, to suggest innovation, to suggest the playfulness. If the man always initiates, women can feel it's not fair and feel like a victim. or get angry, and vice versa if a woman is always initiating. And one way or another, it usually affects our sense of self-esteem or identity if we ask and we're turned down. So, and that's also a failure of communication, of course. If your partner invites or asks and you need to turn down, then what you want to do is do it with love and kindness and make it clear that it's not a rejection of them or put down. And obviously, there are couples who want to reject, who want to be mean, who want to inflict some kind of revenge. And that's very unhealthy and very immature from my viewpoint. So oftentimes one or the other in a couple has some shyness or some sort of difficulty with their own sexual identity, or really I've also experienced people who just have avoided sex altogether and it's undeveloped in them, and so they are in a certain way a sexual anorexic because they refuse, like anorexics refuse to eat. Certain people refuse to look at their sexuality, and therefore their sex drive, their libido, and their arousal map are undeveloped. And I know I was talking to a nurse today, and she was telling me about this wonderful new researcher doctor who can now map in your brain the parts of your brain that you don't ordinarily use and to show how they're undeveloped and they actually atrophy. And that's true of your sexuality and your sexual identity. If you refuse to think about it, if you reject it, if you shut it down, shut it off, then it atrophies. And in order to bring it back to the fullness of health and glowing energy, you need to tend to it with your attention and self-concept, the things you think about, the things you choose to do, how you choose to behave. Any questions, dears? I'm just wondering if you can actually hear me still. Thank you. So failure of timing. And part of that, as this says, is who is in charge, which is then can be a power play. We don't want our sexual bond to be imbued with a competition or using power and influence that way. We want it to be a partnership. And one of the things that Dr. David Snarsh talks about is that each person is comfortable doing and being done, which means you're comfortable receiving pleasure and allowing the other person to please you. You're comfortable giving pleasure and the other person is able to relax and receive it from you. So giving and receiving, and that also goes into reciprocity, of course. Then failure of intimacy. And I started to make a list about the betrayers of intimacy. I tried to make it funny, and I'll read you some of those people in a second. But partners need to say how they feel, be honest, and what they feel, rather than keeping a part of themselves separate or secret from their partner. They may also lose themselves by pleasing or deferring, which also leads to frustration and resentment. So failure of intimacy, which means not being open, honest, and obviously very vulnerable in the sexual relationship. If you're able to openly and completely share what you think, what you feel, what you want. So I want to read to you some of these people in us, some of these roles that we can get lost in, or people that we know put on that betray our intimacy. So I call the first one on my list is cold-hearted Hannah. And cold-hearted Hannah clams up and pouts or plans a poisoning, where she's got a bad attitude about men and about sexuality, and she's going to wreak some kind of revenge, thinking down that road in goodness knows how many complex ways. Then there's who I call Clueless Lester. He may be kind of geeky or a super achiever. These guys could care less about the intimate bond and those parts of a woman, and they just want to get what they want to get, and really don't want to pay attention to a woman's needs, don't want to even know what a woman's sexual response is like. Then there is the perfect couple. I'm so sweet. Please please me while I please you. And if you don't please me, you'll pay. So kind of putting on a mask to look perfect and getting revenge if it doesn't look perfect enough for you. And so then that's surface, obviously, that's not opening and being honest. Then this one that says, nothing I ever do is wrong, so it must be you. So that's the blamer, or the person who just for whatever reason hasn't developed the ability to examine what can I do, what am I doing that may not be working, and tell me about it. I'm willing to go the extra mile with you. Then here's another one. I'll do anything to keep the peace, even lie to you. Again, someone who's not open and honest, and playing a doormat or a pleaser, and doing whatever the other person says, which is immediately a block to intimacy. Then there's another one. If you really loved me, you would do this. But I'm not willing to really love you first. How often have you encountered that in lots of ways, as well as sexually, where the person is looking to get what they need, and until they get what they need, they're not going to be generous or giving or loving. Then there's another one. Taking care of myself is too selfish, so I'll keep on being fat, sad, and bored. And that's very unfortunate. Here's another one. You don't deserve a sexy spouse, so I'll stay fat and get my revenge on you. Let's keep our friends who watch TV, eat, drug, and drink too much, and we won't have to get great. We won't have to really get vulnerable and go the extra mile to be great lovers. Here's another one. I'm too scared or ashamed or opinionated to be really hot, so I'll trivialize sex, and you can like it or lump it. People who say, sex, whatever it is, a woman or a man, and brush it off and refuse to be that brave, that courageous, because being deeply sexually intimate often requires that we are completely, not only physically bare naked, but emotionally and mentally naked, and therefore completely vulnerable. And if your partner isn't safe, you can't afford to be vulnerable. And on the other hand, if you have too many inadequacies inside, you're going to protect yourself and not be completely open. Here's another one. I'm a terrible failure, so you can't really love me. No matter what the spouse of that person does, says, feels, believes, communicates, this person's low self-esteem or bad self-image, never validate or receive the love. And what's it like then to be a loving person where nothing you can do makes a difference or gets through? And then the last one that I wanted to share is, let's not talk, and maybe it'll go away. And so often, sometimes when you're really shy about sex or feeling inadequate or unskilled or unsure of yourself in certain ways, if you just don't talk about it, maybe it'll get better, or maybe this will be good enough. And of course, that's just being passive, and most of the time that doesn't go anywhere. So one of the things I ask people when I give them this particular exercise is, take those statements of opinions or beliefs, and if you want to really dig deep, You might find the rotten roots of such betrayers of intimacy in you or in your relationship. And you want to pull out those weeds and um, work at being clean and clear and honest. And it's hard when you or your beloved have some of those patterns that betray your intimacy in those ways. So that's a little piece from my designer marriage book on those parts of us who think or talk like that and betray our intimacy with our beloved. Then let's look at the number 3 of these 5 sexual failures. The failure of sexual empathy. Partners need to know, respect, and tend to their spouse's needs. Gender differences create one set of needs for women and another set of needs for men. Personality style, past influences, all kinds of things create differences which deserve kindness and respect. Because what we want is you as a man to know your woman so that you know what she likes and how to please her. And goodness knows she's not like any other woman. It's usually sexually easier for a woman, but know your man, know what he loves, what arouses him, what pleases him, and become that kind of lover. That's what we want to do. Form our artfulness in the sexual relationship in the style that is kind, is arousing, is sexy, is fun, is fulfilling, and satisfying for our beloved. So, sexual empathy means empathize with what the other person loves and be willing to be generous there. And if that's true of both partners in the sexual relationship, both partners always feel like they're getting more than they're giving. And that's how our relationships continue to spiral upwards with more and more gratitude, more and more love. Then we've got number 4, failure of reciprocity. Both people need to make the same level of contribution to their lovemaking or to give and receive in reasonably equal amounts. And there are couples where one is easier with it and in certain ways, more energetic, whatever it is, and gives more. That's fine, but only for a while. After a while, the person who's giving all the time thinks, well, is this fair? It's like, when is it my turn? And the person who is receiving then, if they're empathetic, will start to feel guilty and uncomfortable and maybe not know how to have equal reciprocity. And that then deserves conversations. And it's better to have these conversations not in the bedroom. You don't want to bring those problem-solving, intelligent partnerships, the friendship that's solving the problem or concerned. You don't want that to be in the lovemaking. You want that outside when you're both intelligent rather than when you have that vacation attitude. Any questions, dear viewers? Type them on. The last one is failure of romanticization. Romanticization. Although research indicates that most men are even more romantic about relationships than women, there's often still a lack of romance in long-term marriages. Thus, the need for skill with romance, novelty, flirting, eroticism, and emotional arousal, as well as physical arousal, of course. So the failure of romanticization is something that I've shared earlier from the Red Room, where we want to continuously play with romance, add new things, or do the same things that we love that escalate our novelty and arousal. And if we abandon that, if we let that atrophy, it takes away from the vacation attitude, the fun and the pleasure in our sexual encounters. So we have to, if we want to have it, be responsible for the romance. And each one of us, men have their ways, women have their ways, and you want to know what it is that really speaks to your partner. You want to know what their arousal map is. You want to know, even more than that, your own arousal map, so that you know what to ask for, you know what to think about. Because, of course, the largest sex organ, as we all should know, is our mind, what we think about and what's arousing to us mentally. Sometimes what we see is most arousing, but what we see obviously goes through our brain, and it's what we think about. So we want to know our arousal map and our love map, whatever it is that is sexually arousing, whatever it is that gives us a feeling of connection and intimacy, and then think about those things, or do those things, or set those things up. One of the things Jack will tell you is that I love music when we're making love. And I know myself, and as a woman, I know that my left brain, like most women, will kind of go off on me somewhere else, and that I need to keep my left brain engaged with my right brain and my body and my senses. And if I hear music that feels sexy to me, and of course each one of us has different kinds of music, and sometimes different kinds of music different times, that feels sexy or libidinous or about sensory pleasure, that occupies the left brain in those areas. So that's one of the things that I know works for me, and you need to know what works for you. So I'm just wondering if you were able to articulate this. Do you have a sense of what is sensual versus sexual? Do you have a sense of those two things? They're often connected, sometimes they're not. And some of the ways to get into our sexy mood is to start with sensuality. So sensual, senses, means of the five senses, and stimulating those senses in pleasurable ways. And like I just mentioned, for me, one of those sensory, sensual things is music, and sensual music that sounds sensual to me. And that's a way to move into sexuality, into your sensory, right-brained pleasure centers. So think about what is it that is sensual to you, and what is it that's sexual to you, and know how to play that artfully, gracefully. And what we want to do, of course, is know what's sexual and what's sensual to our intimate partner. One of the things that we need in order to keep ourselves sexy and intimate, and to have that universal panacea present in our intimate relationship, in our day-to-day, month-to-month life, is you've got to make the time. And when people are having complaints, and they come to me and complain about their sex life, many times it's because one or both of them is too exhausted. And that means that they haven't made the time to make love, because probably if they have extra time, they just want to veg or sleep. And so if you don't take care of yourself and have a healthy lifestyle where you get enough rest and relaxation and you're healthy, you end up losing your sex life because you're too exhausted and you don't make the time. So the biggest thing is sexuality and making love moves through time. And if you don't have the time, then you lose your sexual relationship. So protect the time also from conflict. As I mentioned before, if you want to communicate about something that where you want an improvement, please don't say it when you're making love or in the bedroom. Protect that time. If you have a complaint or an improvement you want, take it outside of your lovemaking time. That's the respectful and decent thing to do, and frankly, it's the utilitarian thing to do if you really want to be effective with it. So make conflict and issues off limits when you have sensual time together. Pay attention to sensuality. So even when you're not making love or not in the bedroom or not being sexual, pay attention to the five senses, to touching each other, whether it's playful or sweet or sensual or sexy. Touch each other. Smell good. Isn't that nice when your partner hugs you or kisses you and says, you smell good? You know that the olfactory is one of the oldest senses. So that one usually is a pretty easy one to achieve. Ha! We have someone chiming in. Yay! So, no asking to paint the ceiling green, he said, smiling. Asking to paint the ceiling green. Not sure. If you want to paint the ceiling green, you could do it together and make it foreplay, I'm sure. Or, if she likes green and she's on the bottom, I assume that's what she is saying during. Well, I'm not sure exactly what you're saying, but when I mentioned that we women have a need to pull into the right brain because our left brain is takes us off, I think that's one of the examples you're using. And most women agree with me when I talk about it this way. Yes, distracted by the left brain. Because, the brain structure between men and women, women have connections between left and right brain. Men, the left and right brain is more separated. So there's a piece of corpus callosum that connects the woman's left and right brain. And that means that as women, we are global thinkers. We're thinking something and we know what we're feeling about it. If we're feeling something, we know why. Whereas a man is either usually thinking or he's feeling, which explains many things about talents that men have versus talents that women have and the distinction between those. But what happens then is a man goes into his right brain when he's being sexual and he's very focused there and he's immersed there. His vacation attitude comes just like that. Somebody says, I'm fine with intimacy in bed. I'm not fine with intimacy out of bed. Do you know why? Have you examined that? Have you figured out? Is that self-doubt? Is that fear? Is that appropriateness? Is that shyness? Is that hard to get aroused? You know yourself. What is it that places that limitation on you? And then, of course, a woman, sexually, she's thinking and feeling at the same time, which means she's trying to move into her right sensory brain, so she's sensual and feeling. But if her left brain hasn't been courted to connect with that, her left brain goes off and thinks about the clothes in the dryer, or is the door locked, or are the kids waking up, and what's that face in the ceiling? And then we say to ourselves, what's the matter with me? If you haven't been mentored by somebody like me, I'm supposed to be making love with my husband. It's like, where's my, it's like, this is really not good. Well, it's the way a woman's brain works. And that means that when you know about that as a woman, what you want to do is learn how to court your brain to be sexy and to think about sexual things, and maybe use fantasies or images that are sexy to you, so that you take that smart left brain that's always going tick, 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 thinking about things, and get it thinking about erotic, sexy, sensual things. So the person that says, I'm not fine with intimacy out of bed, says, I'm in my protective man mode, hunter, rescue roles kick in. So this is a guy. Your protective man mode. So that says that if you're not in the bedroom, you don't feel safe. I would assume if you're in your own house or your own apartment, you should feel safe. I mean, if the front door is locked, right? Unless you've got kids somewhere. So that, if you don't have something like that, then I would say that if you're letting the hunter or rescuer roles kick in. And when you recognize that, you make the distinction, oh, it's safe. Hunter, rescuer, go take a nap. I'm going to enjoy the pleasure of this space. I'm going to make this space ours and sexy and sensual and delicious. And frankly, I'm on vacation. I don't need a protector. I don't need a hunter. And boy, neither does she. He says, got it. Good, thanks. Yeah, you have charge. You are in charge of the hunter and the rescuer. And they're great guys. And you don't need them when you want to be erotic. Communicate your desires, dears. Sometimes people have a hard time doing that. But people who are sexual are grown-ups, or they better be. And that means that you need to be a grown-up about communicating and being honest. And you don't want to, remember, do it in the bedroom. You want to do it outside of the bedroom. Okay. Heather, I love that. I'm on vacation. Thank you, dear. Good thing to remind myself of. Yes, we all need these micro, yummy vacations. How about inviting others into the bed? Others, how do you mean? Others other than your spouse? Do you mean more than just two people? And I know that there are some people, and I've worked with people who do that, and I'm no prude, but I am interested in true intimacy. And my opinion is that those kinds of things, as in other couples, yes, my opinion is that those kinds of things destroy intimacy. And that I would add that to one of the list that I gave you tonight, a failure of traditional marriage. That would be a failure of intimacy, because true deep intimacy that is heartful and spiritual between in a great love between intimate partners. You can't preserve that and allow anybody else into that private place. Now that's my opinion, and that's how I think about it and how I mentor people with it. Other people don't want to live that way or disagree with me, and I have, it's not my business to tell you how to live your life. I do believe, though, that you can't really preserve a deep, intimate relationship with your partner if you let someone else inside that private place. And there are some people who don't want intimacy, who don't want the deep, vulnerable, complete bond with another human being, with another soul. There are people who don't want that, who are afraid of it, who are cynical about it, who have been abused or wounded or too casual or too immature, whatever it is. I believe that we learn through our relationships, and sooner or later we learn in those kinds of relationships as well. But I'm always devoted to what's excellent and what is tender and virtuous and loving. And I think that kind of playing around with sex is a sign that we haven't really deeply connected with the profundity. Just like how we have an appetite for anything. Um, if we think about what's happening in our country right now with food, the appetite that we have for food is unhealthy, where we indulge too much in foods that don't keep our self-respect and our health and our vital nature, and don't stay with the foods like an adult would that are full of life and keep us alive and active and joyful and healthy. So whatever appetite we have, um, there's always a way where if we go too far this way, it's not healthy anymore. If we go too far this way, it's not healthy anymore. And I'm focused on mentoring and teaching and articulating the best that I know, the best that I know today. I may learn more as years go by, and I usually do, but that's how I view it. Any other questions, you guys? Now, one of the things that I'm aware of, I don't know intimately or in much detail, but I'm aware of my colleagues who have treatment centers for people who have sexual addiction and who have, some of them who have become damaged or wounded by the use of pornography and don't know how to have a healthy relationship with their own sexuality or an intimate relationship with the beloved. And those are signs to me of what our culture now hasn't figured out yet. Because if we're using our sexual appetite and our sexuality in ways that don't feel like that universal panacea that connects us emotionally, mentally, psychologically, spiritually, physically, then there's something missing there. And many of us have many opinions on that. We're trying to figure out what isn't working. And of course, the work that I've done on designer marriage talks to looking at all the healthy things that we need and want in a deep, intimate relationship. And also, what you find me talking about are the ignorances and the mistakes and the wounds that happen, that we have received, that we live because of just our times. The previous generations didn't have the time or the knowledge about psychology, about people internally, about how to live a beautiful lifestyle. So much of that was very, very few people were philosophical or educated, and most of them were just working hard and surviving and practical. So we're now developing an understanding, a deep understanding of what's healthy inside, spiritually, psychologically, emotionally. Emotional intelligence really hasn't been used, defined, or taught until the last 10 or 20 years. And a huge part of an intimate relationship is emotional intelligence. So the sense of the pornographic industry and the sex trade, the unhealthy ways that sexuality is showing up in our culture are flashing signs to me of what we're missing, of what we haven't figured out yet, of what we haven't mentored or taught yet, of what we don't know how to do, how to live in the healthy way. Got it, thanks. You're so welcome. And thank you for asking. Let's see. There's a quote here I wanted to share with you. It's Barbara DeAngelis, whom she's famous, she's lovely, she's brilliant. I love her books, her work. She says, "It's not your partner's job to be more lovable. It's your job to be more loving." And the things that I was talking about in terms of our failure in this culture, in the previous cultures, and then in our culture where we're starting to think about it and learn and articulate it with our intimate relationships and our intimacy and our sexuality, if we bring it back to where we want to bring all human things back, what is the loving thing to do? Yeah, Barbara DeAngelis used to be married to John Gray. She did, didn't she? Both of them are great gifts to our culture right now. I take my hat off to both of them, and I use their wisdom and their knowledge regularly. So I'm looking for, as always, what is the loving thing to do? That's right down the bottom line. And that comes from being utmost respectful, kind, patient, sensitive, empathetic to our loved one, and getting to that place of being a woman, not a girl, a queen, not a damsel in distress. How she manages herself and how she expresses herself with the people whom she loves. Same thing. How does one conduct oneself as a man? And then in the role of the husband who is husbanding, tending to, caring for, protecting, rather than the teenager or the man about town or the white knight in shining armor. A real man and a husband, someone who husbands. I made myself a note about this somewhere. I'm looking for it. I'm not seeing it. But the different roles that I ask, I know I put it on a sticky note around here somewhere. Here it is. So which voices do you find in your sex life with your intimate partner? Do you use your parent voice, your mommy or your daddy? No. Not sexy. Do you use your little girl voice or your little boy voice? Not sexy. I mean, the little girl voice can be flirtatious if it's coming from a real woman. You know, it can be playful. But if it's a whiny little, take care of me, please, then it's not sexy. Or does your protector pop up like this guy who says, wait a minute, the reason I can't have fun and, what do they say, baptize all the rooms in your house, have sex in every one of your rooms. The reason he can't do that is he goes into the protector mode, which is not sexy. A sensual woman doesn't need protection. She needs a lover. So I'm thinking, which voices? And is it the intelligent adult voice that you use, which certainly is not hot, is not sexy, is a little bit prickly. So notice which voices or which parts of yourself you use, and make sure that you move into the lover, the person who wants to give pleasure and who is willing to adore their loved one for the pleasure that they give. Maybe they're a little clumsy, maybe they don't really know, but they're giving. And so you receive that with open arms and gratitude. And if you want to improve it, outside the bedroom, remember? What's the bottom line? That's Jack's phrase. The bottom line is, do the loving thing. Be a real man who adores and pleasures his woman with tenderness and open eyes and sensitivity and empathy. And usually our great lovers, and the other women listening will, I'm sure, agree with me on this, our great lovers, gosh, those men are so patient with us. It's awesome. It always is awe-inspiring to me because sometimes women are pretty complicated and it takes a long time, right? And men are so patient and they are such willing lovers, regardless of what their woman needs. So ladies, always tell him, show him, ask him for what you need, because a real man is so kind, patient, and giving and strong for us that way. So both ways. The bottom line is, do the loving thing generously, because that's what you'll get in return. Thank you so much for tuning in with me tonight, talking about sexual intimacy, the universal panacea. It helps, heals, comforts, arouses, delights, most anything about who we are when we can get a great orgasm and get close to our sweetheart. So anything that interrupts that deserves to be, in a gentle and intelligent way, removed so that you maintain that place that's the most private, the most precious renewal any man or woman can receive, in my opinion. That wonderful vacation attitude. Thank you, Heather. You're so welcome. Yeah, thanks for the overtime. Well, I started late because I wasn't sure about my technology, so I'm happy to be here overtime. Thank you so much, dears. Bless you for tuning in, and I will see you same time next week in the Red Room. Good night, everybody. Honey, He says, yeah. Yeah.